All right, everybody. Oh man, I got a good one today. Woo, man, I got a guy that's gonna blow your mind with some stuff that, okay, put it this way. Sometimes people can think that what really happened, and I'm going back to slavery days, might not have happened. You know, yeah, for whatever reason, maybe some documents, some hearsays and all that stuff. The guy today is actually going into the former slave homes and buildings and landmarks across the country because he worked for the government. So it ain't no, I don't believe it. He in the spots and he has come on strong inspirations. I'm telling you, folks, I bring it to you straight, no chaser. I don't tell the stories. I let them tell it because then I know we're going to get it right. So if you don't do nothing right now, take a 30-second break and hit the subscribe button. That's 5 seconds. Hit the like button. That's another 5 seconds. Hit that notifications button. That's 5 seconds. And you got 15 seconds left to get ready because we about to blow your mind. We about to blow your mind. I'm telling you, I'll give it to the guy who's going to tell it to you like it really is. If you don't know, I got a movie out. It's called Business in the Black, The Rise of Black Business in America. It's 75 minutes long. And before you get sleepy, it's over. Because it's going to blow your mind on all these amazing facts in Black history from 1800 to 1960. And you really won't get sleepy by no stretch because you'll be like, I want more. And let me give you a little hint. The movie ends with a guy that's 101 years old telling the story. 101 years old. He lived to be 103. If you don't have a DVD player, it's streaming on Amazon. And then I wrote the book, Black Business Book, over 200 facts. So it's a lot like the movie, but it's kind of a little more in depth. But it's easy to read because all I did was give you these facts. I don't even add no commentary. No. The facts stand alone. And I numbered them. So you could be like, hey, man, did you read that book in fact number 57? You got to go to it. And it's easy to find. And it's also on Amazon. Amazon got it all. And so it's on Amazon. But it's also on my website, inspirationsbystrong.com. Inspirationsbystrong.com. So take, you had 15 seconds left. Take another minute and order my book and my movie. But before that, you don't want to miss this. So come on, guest man, you ready? Introduce yourself and let's get it on. Let's get it on.
All right. Thanks for having me, Anthony. So my name is Jason Church. I am the Chief of Technical Services for the National Center for Preservation Technology and Training. We're a National Park Service research office out of Natchitoches, Louisiana.
Wow. So now it's the federal government, right?
Federal government. So we're
okay. So y'all got the money. Service. See, you got the money. You can do what you want. You can make sure it's thorough.
Where are your tax dollars at work?
Oh, and so is this your background? Are you a historian? What's your background?
I'm a conservator. By training, I'm a conservator. So for the last 20 years, I've gone around and done mostly cemetery preservation. So I go into cemeteries, I teach people how to restore them, how to preserve them. I do the physical work. Also we do analysis in our laboratories where we'll tell you, what the mortar makeup was, how the building was originally painted, maybe what it was treated with, that sort of thing.
Ooh, that's kind of gory, isn't it? It's kind of spooky.
No. Cemeteries are your public sculpture gardens.
Yeah.
That's our tangible history to our past.
Have you ever, I'm off the tangent a little bit, but been in the cemetery and an arm grabbed your leg or something like that? Like in the movies, that ever happened to you?
No, I only worry about the living people in there, not the dead ones.
Yeah. Wow. But you've seen some that the cemeteries wasn't kept up. Did you ever see a body out or something like that?
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of them.
Oh man, that's crazy. Let me ask you this. If you don't mind, this is a little bit off the cuff, but going into that cemetery component. When they had mass murders, and I just had a guest on there whose great great grandfather suspected was lynched in South Carolina, and they had all these, they had these lynchings and stuff like that. Uh, those are not cemeteries. So, have you been in any of those circumstances where you might have found some bodies of people who might have been lynched? Anything?
No, so I've never looked. There are people, especially archaeologists, that go out and look for unmarked graves and missing bodies. But no, for me as a conservator, I've always worked on the physical, headstones, monuments, tombs, that sort of thing. So
Yeah,
never gone looking for them.
really. So there are people who do that, and then they might be able to zoom the bodies and get dental records or whatever, and assume this is who this is that people have been looking for from back in the day.
Yeah, you could do DNA. There wouldn't be any dental records, so you wouldn't have
Yeah,
to compare it against. But you could do DNA extraction, but you'd have to have someone like the gentleman you were talking about, someone who thought they were related to compare against.
yeah, sure. Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's
yeah.
interesting. So now what is it that you're working on now? Give us a little insight. Yes.
Yeah, so we're doing a project. We did a pilot study in summer of 2019, and then this year in September, we started full time. We're going to run at least 2 years, hopefully more if we get more money. But we're traveling around and doing, taking a 3D laser scanner and making 3D models of any still standing slave and tenant cabins or tenant structures that we can find. So right now we've only been in the state of Louisiana. That's kept us busy since September. There's probably more structures still standing here in Louisiana than any other state. And then we're heading to Mississippi next month, and then on to the state of Maryland, and then to Florida. So keep moving around for the next couple of years, mostly lining up sites through social media. So I'll give you my link if anybody knows of a former slave cabin or a structure that was used for tenant farming. Let us know. And the other aspect is we're interviewing a lot of former tenant farmers, and that's actually how this project started.
Mm.
Um,
Hold on, let me hold you. Tenant farmers, that sharecroppers, that kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So tenant farmers, sharecroppers, because there's this sort of gap in our history. As someone jokingly said the other day, well, we've got Harriet Tubman and then Rosa Parks. Nobody was between them, right? So we're trying to fill in that gap. Most people, that's all we studied in school. We hear about Harriet Tubman, we hear about Rosa Parks, but there's a huge amount of history in between them, and
sure.
important things that we just don't get told about.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's part of what my book fills in, and there's so many others. But now when you go into these slave quarters, they're just wooden buildings that somehow withstood the test of time, right?
Well, most of them have withstood the test of time because they were still used. Emancipation hit, people didn't walk away from the building, especially here in sort of the deeper South. Those buildings were occupied by the same people who went from slave to sharecropper or tenant farmer, working for the same people. Sometimes I interviewed one gentleman who was still hand-picking cotton under a tenant system in 1978.
Wow.
Lasted a lot longer than people really want to talk about.
Yeah.
That it really, that's the story we want to tell. It really moved from, chattel slavery to economic slavery.
Oh.
Now so basically the gist is that when slavery ended, you had a whole workforce that had no other skill. They didn't know anything beyond, they may have never been beyond a few miles of where they were born.
Yeah.
Where are you going to go? Now, surely lots of people did.
Yes.
A lot of people really didn't have many options. You had no money, you had no food.
Yes.
To go.
Yeah.
What happened was a lot of the plantation owners essentially said, hey, bygones, why don't you work for me now and I'll pay you?
Yes.
Well, that sounds like a pretty good deal. I don't have to change much and now I'm going to get paid. Reality of that was, well, now you got to pay rent. Well, now you got to pay for those clothes. Well, now you got to pay for the food that I was giving you before. So a lot of them went into an agreement with the plantation owner that you work for me, I will give you a share, so sharecropping. I will give you a share of what you worked, but I'm going to deduct everything you owed me. So at the end of the year, you probably, most likely never break even. Jim Crow laws, you couldn't just say, hey, I'm never going to break even. I need to head on up the road and try something better.
Yes.
We're under contract with this plantation owner, so you couldn't leave. So you were stuck there, and thus becomes economic slavery.
Wow.
I interviewed one gentleman who said every year they told him the same thing. If you'd have gotten one more bail, you'd have broke even this year. And he said he remembers hearing that his entire life growing up. The plantation owner would tell him at the end of the year, if you'd have just saved up a little bit and made one more bail, you'd have made it.
Wow.
And the other reality is, if you had a mostly illiterate workforce, who's going to argue how that ledger comes out at the end of the year?
Yeah, right.
So you get people who were stuck in economic slavery until the 1960s.
Wow. So now, let me go back because I got you. I got you. So let me ask you this. Let's go back to the slave quarters. What kind of wood did they use? How was the house so well put together? What kind of house was it? Did it have, one room? Was it, what did the houses mostly look like?
Yeah, so it's a mix. There's definitely some of them that are brick. But most of the ones, at least that we're finding in our region, very similar architecturally, and they're made out of cypress. So cypress is a long-standing wood, doesn't, super resistant to rot. It was probably lime washed originally. Most of the time that we're finding now, there's nothing left on them. They're just a grade wood, and usually one room. A lot of times you'll have two doors, a center fireplace, and two rooms, but that's not two rooms like we think of it. That would be essentially what we call a duplex now. So two different families sharing the same building. A lot of times they have a front porch and a back, and the back porch was eventually boarded in, and that's where you get a kitchen and maybe a bathroom. But most of these never had running water, never had electricity. So, one room.
Did they have a window?
Yeah, we've seen a couple that didn't, but 98% of all the ones I've seen have had window openings. They may have not had glass till later. May have just been an opening that you could have opened and closed with shutters. And then, what we think of as windows, sash windows would have been added later.
Is there something about a slave dwelling like one of those houses that you say was so architecturally well beyond its time, or something, the way they put the wood together? Or
no, so it's been a mix. We've definitely seen some that are log cabins. So they're, think of what we think of as a pioneer log cabin. They're chinked logs, dovetailed together. We've seen a lot of them, however, have been recycled wood. When you start looking at them, you start looking at the nail holes and you realize that doesn't really line up with anything. Or you might have a blue board over here and a red one over here and a white one over here. These were just thrown together out of recycled wood.
Okay. What might be the oldest one that you've seen so far, going back?
Oh, that's a good question. Most of the ones that we have documented have been, 1830s. And then some of the tenant cabins have been around turn of the century, which of course they're not slave cabins, but they were been built in amongst cabins that had been lost. And they're about 1900, but 1830s is the average date for a lot of the ones that we've been documenting.
Oh man. And so for a house to stand that long, what they had a fireplace in the middle. You say that kept them warm. What will you think you'll find in or you've already found in the homes that are in more northern territories where it get colder?
Um, well, I know, I've looked at ones in North Carolina, Virginia. You start to get a nicer building. The ones around here are usually one board, thick walls. That's about it. So when you start getting up there architecturally, they get sturdier, a little nicer looking, larger.
Does that mean they're newer, or this they did a little bit more because of the climate?
Yeah, and they were built a little nicer as well, a little bit larger. The ones around here, like I said, tend to be about 10 foot by 10 foot.
Yeah.
Maybe some of the bigger ones are 10 by 20.
Did, when you find these homes, do you find some of the original furniture and stuff in there too? The teapots, the whatever that goes with it?
Yeah, so a lot of them, if we sort of climb under the floor and kind of look around, we'll find lots of bottles and um, broken ware and things like that under them. We just sort of take pictures and leave them right where we found them.
Oh, really?
Herb them. Some of the ones have remnants of the furniture in them, especially like I said, the ones that were used till much later still have furniture that definitely could have dated from that time period.
Really?
Some
And then do you try to do something to chronicle this, or you tell the museums, hey, there's some stuff down there you might want to get or whatever?
We are taking pictures,
Yeah.
and then of course our 3D data captures all that, but then we just leave it. There have been owners that have told, hey, you might want to consider, bringing those chairs in, or
Yeah.
lots of chairs. I keep finding chairs left in places.
In most of the cases of the homes, are there on the plantations, are there homes nearby, or are most of them one home dwellings, or how is it a community of homes? How does that go?
Yeah, so it depends on the site. Lots of sites, there's one building left back in the woods, and that's it. Yeah, that's all we're finding is maybe.
But there might have been others, but there's just still one that made it.
Yeah, but we know there were lots. So I'll give you an example. We worked at Magnolia Plantation, which is owned by the Park Service. Part of it is.
Yeah.
They have a very well-known brick slave dwelling. So 2-door, center fireplace, but they're brick structures. Very nice. Well built. So that's it. There's one wooden cabin that has collapsed since we scanned it. But I was very intrigued. You have one wooden one, but you have this rows of brick ones. Why is this one wooden one out by itself? So we started asking around, and we finally interviewed a gentleman. He's in his 90s who started working at the site in the 70s, and he helping manage the plantation. And he explained to us that no, when he was hired in the 70s, his first job was to tear down all the wooden structures because they weren't being lived anymore. And he started telling us, well, there were 20 over here, there were 40 over here, there were another, 20 over here. So they were clustered in neighborhoods. And you start realizing, wait, it wasn't this 10 that we're used to. There were 30, 40, 50 of these things all spread around the plantation. That we sort of forget is how large some of these plantations really were.
Okay, I got you.
As people have died off and they've been split in inheritance, or as maybe the family kept the big house and a couple of outbuildings and sold off the land.
Sure.
You start realizing, we documented a structure recently that was part of another plantation, and the gentleman who owned it said, oh no, I was like, that's 20-minute drive from here. Oh yeah, this was all this plantation. Ones that we've started to document, they'll talk to us in miles. Oh, it ends 9 miles back. And you start realizing how really large and how many people were really there. And for me, that's been a big eye opener because, I didn't grow up with this. So I have sort of grown up with, going to historic sites, and they might have one cute little slave cabin right behind the big house, and that's kind of it. And you go there, as a kid, and you go, oh, they had a couple of slaves. Okay. And then you hit the reality. No, they had 200 slaves, and their cabins were actually 5 miles back in the field. They weren't anywhere near the big house because that's not what people wanted to look at. You didn't have your people visiting, and you've got all your workers here. They were way back on the property, and there were hundreds of people. So there were whole neighborhoods, and that's one of the things that's been lost. As sites sort of save that one and drag it up by the big house for interpretation, you lose the fact that these were whole neighborhoods. And we've gotten a lot of that by doing the interviews. The people talk about, what it was like living in a neighborhood. Everyone had their own vegetable gardens and their own flowers and their own fences. And it was a living, breathing, active neighborhood at one point.
Yeah.
A lot of that's been lost to history and to interpretation.
Sure. There's a fact in my book that talks about a lady who was so mad at her master, I mean, and all of them I'm sure was, that she escaped from her house to her mom's house on the same plantation and lived in the crawl space for 7 years. And all she could do was look out the peephole and see her kids playing. And then she eventually escaped. Can you imagine a crawl space of somebody being able to live in? The crawl space is between the ground and the floor. Is that what a crawl space is?
Yeah, so you would have been sharing it with, of course, every time it rained, anytime there was huge temperature shift, you would have rising damp. You'd have been down there with all the critters that are trying to get under there for shelter. That would have been awful. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Unbelievable story. Yeah, and for 7 years. And I would suspect that at night she somehow came up, and ate with the family or whatever, but she escaped to her mom's crawl space. Do you see what did they use the restroom?
Outhouses.
What do you document the outhouses also?
They're usually not there. We just were at a plantation, Laurel Valley in Thibodaux, Louisiana, and their outhouses are still intact, but definitely later additions. They're not the original. They were done, I would say, around the teens. And they have a little cast concrete floor, the little cast concrete, essentially a pot that comes up, and then a larger hole underneath. And we have documented those, but those are the only that we've seen so far. Usually, the outhouse is long gone.
So now, what would have been an outhouse? A little small building with some kind of toilet seat that they could sit on and a hole in the ground. Is that kind of what it is?
Yeah. So as those fall over, you want to fill those in because now you got a big gaping hole that you don't want people falling in, or tractors falling in, or kids falling in. So those get covered up and filled in pretty quickly. That's why we're not finding them. But yeah, you would have just had a hole dug in the ground, and then basically some boards laid over that for support, and then a small shelter with a hole in it. And found have a little chimney for ventilation. My favorite one I have found. We have not gone back to document it. I was there one day with only a camera, but it's a very early. This would have been antebellum period, so just after the Civil War it was built, but a very early Black church. The church is gone, cemetery is still there, which is why I was there working. Only thing left of the church is the cornerstone sitting in the field, and the outhouse survived for whatever reason. But it's a three-hole outhouse, so you have a long bench with 3 holes in it. And I just, in my mind, thinking about growing up, going to Baptist church on Sunday, I can't imagine being that closely connected with your parishioners.
Yeah, sure.
You would, there's no privacy if you're sitting. There's no dividers, there's no doors. You're just sitting on a bench with 3 holes in it. So I'm
inside the building, though. Yeah,
inside the little building, which is about 5 foot wide.
Yeah, so that might have been a wood plank with a hole in it, which is the toilet seat, let's say.
Yep.
And it just drops down in the hole.
Yeah, so it's one plank with 3 holes drilled, 3 holes bored in it. So.
And then I hear they use corn as toilet paper.
Yep, you had to use something. So corn cobs.
Wow. Now, how do you do anything with the big houses? How elaborate were the main houses per se?
So we have not documented any big houses. We figured that they've had their glory. They've been documented. Um, there's shelves of books written on those. So we're just focusing on the worker housing. But it depends. I mean, some of them are very large, very elaborate, really rich carvings and plasterwork, and
Really?
some are much simpler than I thought they would be.
Oh, really? Okay. Now, when you see these homes and these plantations, can you kind of, in your own way, envision if somebody lived there? Did they have fences around the property, or how might a slave escape? Um, he just have you ever heard somebody say, and he just ran that way, thinking that that's the way to go?
Um, so most of them, you've got, at least in Louisiana, I'll speak to Louisiana because I have more experience with that. We've gone to so many sites here. You've got water bordering at least one side, a lot of times two sides, because that was your roadways. They didn't really have roadways. So your main transportation were up and down the waterways. So that's one of your borders. Um, and then, you're just looking at fields as far as the eye can see. Maybe they're cotton fields, maybe they're cane fields. Um, I mean, you could definitely take off running, but I mean, there's night raiders, there's night patrols, there's people out looking for you. I could see where it would be pretty hard to go very far. Um, I think about, and I read a lot of the slave narratives and even the fictional work based on what they were hearing, like some of Ernest Gaines' novels. If you ever read any of his, like the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, she talks about she walks for days and days, and she's not, after emancipation, and she's not even left the parish yet. And she realizes, wait, I'm never going to get out of the state. She's walked for,
Yeah.
you know, um, so yeah, there's lots of accounts of people just walking off. But I think it would take a lot more than we think it would.
Yeah, I can imagine. Wow. Do you um is there did you ever find a tree where you heard that's where they hung the people, that's where they beat the people on the property, any of that kind of thing?
So far, no. I mean, I know it exists, but no. One of the things that we want to work on in the project is try to document some of the sites in sort of the Reconstruction period. There were a lot of large scale massacres that aren't talked about in history. People,
Yeah.
that's something that's been washed over, and I didn't even know existed until very recently.
Yes.
Um, and that goes back to trying to document more about what it was like as a tenant farmer. So one of the things that one of the goals of the project is to try to bring in light some of these stories of these large scale massacres, and to try to find some of the structures that are still standing that would have been involved in those. There
What
were
no,
quite a
what do you
few.
think? What does that mean? A structure that would have been involved, like a barn where they just killed, had everybody come in there and kill them, or what do you mean by that?
Well, a lot of times the massacres took place in their homes. So if you think about some of the events that happened, like the Thibodeau massacre, the Colfax, the Saint Bernard massacre, these were really labor movements. Especially like something like the Thibodeau or the Saint Bernard massacre. These were, essentially labor strikes. You had sugar plantation workers that said, hey, we're not getting paid a fair wage, we're not getting paid enough, and they decided to really speak out against this. And in retribution, they just came door to door and killed everybody, men, women, children, just shot them in their homes. So trying to find some of those buildings that might still be around to document, to help tell that story of what happened.
Wow. Can you in whatever buildings you've been in, even maybe if that's been the case, do you see blood
Nah.
on the wood or any of that? Or is all that kind of washed away?
Yeah, all that'd be gone. These things have weathered for so long. Uh,
Have you have you ever heard of ghosts in any of the buildings?
I have not. So definitely there is, I will say, um, there definitely are strong emotions in the buildings. I mean, you can feel these are places of oppression. I mean, they're not, architecturally we can talk about them, but going in and being in the buildings, they're definitely a sense in the buildings, no doubt.
Mm, wow, unbelievable.
Yeah, I
Is
know
there a
you had
question that I haven't asked you of some sort that comes to mind? Something that you wanted to mention?
just going back to what we're saying, we're running most of this through social media. So, you know, we have YouTube videos that we're doing of all the interviews we do. We have YouTube videos of the 3D models that we're making, so you can kind of go in the building, walk around, and see it. Um, but we're really sort of crowdsourcing this. So if somebody, one of your viewers is out there and they've got a building they know of that um, they can get us permission to get there, we'll come document it. And
Mm.
the other thing that's even more important, um, if you know someone who was a tenant farmer or sharecropper and they want to talk to us, we'd love to interview them. Try
Wow.
those firsthand stories before they're gone. Because
What at the end of the day, what are you all going to do with this information? Where does this go?
so, of course, we're putting it all out on social media. Eventually, we'll have what's called a story map, so you'll be able to look at an interactive map and click on the site will come up, pictures, the model. You can walk through it. You can hear the interview. Eventually, I want to move a lot of our 3D models that we're already making into virtual reality, so that a school in Iowa
Yeah.
can see what it's like to walk through the quarters. And you had asked earlier, and I didn't really get around to it. Some of the sites are still intact as they originally were.
Yeah.
Green Plantation down in Bachery, Louisiana, is a great example. Um, that's 22 buildings. They're all in rows. I mean, it's a full neighborhood.
Yeah.
Be able to, we've scanned them all. We have a 3D model of every building, so you can see every nail hole, every
Yeah.
full buildings. It would be nice to get all that into virtual reality and bring some of it back digitally the way it would have been. Put the fences back, maybe put the outhouse back, put the flowers back in the yard, put your little truck patch of produce that you're growing for yourself, maybe a little extra sell if you could. Um, Trying to put some of that back so people can see that these were active neighborhoods,
Wow.
but that someone could walk through virtually.
Oh man. And so what's your website? Is there a website? Do you have some of this up now online of some of the work you've completed and people can see it now?
Yeah, so our website is www.ncptt.nps.gov.
Okay.
And then you also can watch us on YouTube or Instagram. It's just NCPTT.
Okay. Well, hey, everybody, I'm gonna put his website in the description on this video so that you can go see it. And I gotta give a shout out. And I know you know my main man, Joseph McGill. Yeah, that's my guy there. And Tammy Gibson. Do you know Tammy?
Yes,
Yeah,
not personally.
yeah. I got to cut this out the video, but nonetheless, hey, thank you so very much for coming on Strong Inspirations and sharing this story. You've enlightened us on a couple fronts. I know I am, and I can feel it uh, as if what could have happened and what that life was like. That's just another example of what the conditions were at the time. So thank you so much. And everybody, come on, folks. I'm telling you, come on, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notifications button. Tell somebody about Strong Inspirations, because as you see, we cover a little bit of everything. And I give it to you like I like to tell it, straight no chaser, my friends. Straight no chaser, because it's coming at you strong. All right. Thank you so much for being on our channel.
Thanks for having me, Anthony. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Come on, people. Thank you. Have a blessed day. Stay safe. Stay strong. Stay on your grind. Thanks for being on Strong Inspirations. We out. Bye-bye.